Happy Thursday, webheads. Well, buying those comic books are over with. Now, has some of these lived up to my expectations? Well, let's find out. Hey, all my webheads out there, welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. And fans, I am your host, Mike Spider Slayer, always helping you make decisions of what comic books to buy. And today, guys, I'm bringing you another episode of After the Poll. That's right, guys. This is the spin-off series from my most anticipated comic books of the week, where I take 5 or 6 comic books from that most anticipated list. I read them and see if these books live up to the hype. So, guys, hopefully you enjoy the show. Now, if you are interested in becoming a Webhead member on my YouTube channel, Comic Book Corner 2.0, all you got to do is hit that join button right there on my home screen. It helps support the channel, and I thank you guys so much. All right, guys, so let's get started with this week's episode of After the Poll. Kicking it off with King Spawn issue 1. That's right, guys. This is the newest series from the Spawn universe. I know a lot of people are anticipating this. There was quite a few variant covers, and let me just tell you, this book was kind of cool. Now, this book was a $6 price tag. However, this is just introducing kind of that universe to its readers, and this point going forward, this book will be $2.99. So don't stress out. It's going to be affordable. So let's check out some of the interior artwork here in this book. It actually looks pretty good. Not to the standard as the original Spawn series that is out right now, but still dark. Has that tone of like Spawn, you know, how he comes out of the shadows and whatnot. And we get to see some really cool pictures of the character. As you flip through this book, you get to see just other characters that are going to be in the Spawn universe as well. Check out this guy right here. So artistically, it's a really good book. So really, there's multiple stories in this book, and one has to do with a bombing that happened in New York, and Spawn is trying to solve this crime on who did it, and obviously he thinks it's one of his, hell creatures or shadow people, and he's trying to solve this. So this is kind of like the main story that was going on. But after this wraps up and you get reintroduced to a villain from Spawn's past, I guess, we get introduced to characters that are going to be in the Spawn universe. Now, the big thing that surprised me in this comic book was the return of the character Haunt. Okay, this character was introduced from Todd McFarlane a long time ago. And I thought this guy just like dropped off the face of the earth, and now all of a sudden he's reappearing in the pages of Spawn, and it looks like he's going to be in the Spawn universe. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. So I thought that was really cool to see that character. And then you get introduced to some of the other characters. Like there's this one other character that's a Spawn creature by the name of Nightmare, and he looks like this. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's pretty interesting. And it's just like, I don't know, he was like killing like mafia people and stuff like that. So whatever the case happened there, it was pretty cool. Then you get introduced to this kid who looks like I don't know if he has an attachment to another character where like he does movements and he controls this being. And he killed everybody there too. So there's a lot of killing and gore in this book. And then obviously you get introduced to the character by the name of Gunslinger. So these characters are all going to be in the Spawn universe. This was a pretty good introduction to the character in case you have not known who he is yet. For newer readers, this is the time that you're going to have to jump on board, okay? Even though you don't know exactly what's 100% going on, at least you get a good jumping on point. I always say that if you truly want to jump on Spawn, 300? Yeah, 300, I get confused with SpiderMan, thinking it's a different book. But anyway, 300 is a good point to jump on for a lot of readers, and then you get caught up with all the new characters. But I definitely recommend King Spawn. This was a cool book, and I can't wait to see how this story progresses and all of the other Spawn comic books in the future. All right, next, guys, we have Thor issue 16. We're kind of in the middle of a little story arc here with Thor dealing with the situation of his hammer, right? He can't really lift the hammer, and he's seeing these nightmares, and he basically just leaves his hammer for someone else to pick up, which is kind of weird, and that's what happens in this story. Okay, so I'm just letting you know, from this point forward, and I should have said it earlier, there are spoilers in this review. So if you don't want to see what's going on in these comic books, you got to read your copies, okay? So here is the interior artwork when it comes to Thor. It's not Nick Klein art. It's a different artist. So it does take away a little bit from the storytelling here, especially if you're so used to Nick Klein's artwork in here. The coloring is fine, though. And here we get to see a cool little page here with this beast. Okay, so artwork is pretty good. But in this book, the opening pages really capture you, because it wasn't since, I think, issue 6 where we get to see Thanos holding Mjolnir with the Infinity Stones in it, right? And now it's kind of teased or revisited for the first time in quite a while, because we're on issue 16, right? So that's 10 issues later, and we get to see this happening, where Thanos is basically killing or kills Thor in this issue. So with him having these nightmares every single night and not being able to hold Mjolnir, basically he just puts the hammer anywhere, and for someone to take it, which I think is kind of just really not the right thing to do. I don't know why he would do that. And he's having this discussion with Jane Foster, and you see him get hot dogs and stuff like that, and they come across against, you know, a battle between the Wrecking Crew, and yeah, and that was that. I mean, this issue in this story arc is a little bit fillerish with some big things to come, but it's not a recommended storyline, I guess. But if you've been a fan of Donny Cates' Thor, you're going to definitely want to continue to read this. And obviously, again, big things are going to happen here, and we get to see Thor kind of work together with Odin here, and Angela winds up making an appearance on the last page. So I thought that was actually kind of neat too. So, yeah, book was pretty good. Not the best Thor issue I've ever read, and probably not the best story arc, but things are going to heat up very soon. So one of the books that I'm really enjoying at this point in time is actually Batman Detective Comics. This is issue 1042. I love the character Vile. I just like how he's like this this kind of like his apocalyptic setting type of character, where like he can affect people with his parasites, and then he can see, he has like a hive mind, and he can see through all his victims, which is kind of cool. Now Huntress got affected from it, and we got to see that in Batman's Secret Files, and she's been cured of the parasite, but she can still see his victims as well, which I think is a pretty cool thing that happens in this book. The artwork by Bogdanovich, who did the Wolverine series, is second to none, phenomenal. I mean, he's right up there with Dan Mora when it comes to this title. Look at the artwork in here. Look at how dark and gruesome Batman becomes while infected with this parasite. It's just intense. It's creepy. It's something, again, that you would see in a horror movie, and I loved it. I mean, I was turning every single page with high anticipation of what was going to happen to Mr. Worth, which is a character I hate. And I was like, oh, I hope this guy dies. But in this issue, you really get to see the struggle with Batman trying to fight off this parasite, at the same time trying not to do bad things, because he's being controlled by Vile, and you know, he's still trying to do the right thing by not killing and whatnot. So I thought that was really good. as the issue continues, Huntress joins in the battle, and somehow they wind up getting the parasite to come out of Vile, which I thought was pretty intense. And the Huntress winds up shooting an arrow through the parasite and winds up killing it. So once the parasite dies, then what happens is Vile dies. And some pretty cool character interactions. Probably not the last time we see Mr. Worth, and it's not the last time we're going to see the parasitic creatures of Vile, because as they were doing the autopsy on him, we wind up seeing that there was like little egg sacs that were moving around and wind up going into like the ventilation shafts and whatnot. So somebody else is going to be infected by the Vile parasite in the future. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that complicated of a plot, but I liked it. I just liked the action. I loved the detailed artwork, and it was just a page turner for me. And that's what I liked about it. Then you get the backup story when it comes to Task Force Z, and I'm just like, I don't really care about that. I'll read it when it actually comes out in the real story, I guess, So I really enjoyed Detective Comics, but this is the end of the story arc. This is the end of the Vile character for now, and we'll see where this comic goes. But I'm really enjoying Tamaki's run on Detective Comics. I definitely say read this book. I think Tamaki proved a lot of people wrong about her writing Batman and if she could do it or not. One book that always delivers is Something is Killing the Children. This is issue 19. This continues the story of Erica Slaughter's origin story, right? How she became such the badass that she is today. Now, she had to go through the trials of confronting her monster, right? And we know that this monster is like one of the biggest and baddest monsters of them all. And if she was to survive this, it was going to be a low success rate. And in this issue, you wind up getting to see her go through that, which was really awesome. The artwork in Something That's Killing His Children is phenomenal. It's always very consistent. The great thing about this book is you always see the characters' eyes, and it draws you to their eyes, whether they're green or blue or purple or orange or rainbow, whatever it is, right? That's the thing. It captures the emotion through the characters' eyes, even if you only see just the eyes, which is really cool. Now, this issue is a really fast read, and I think Something Is Killing the Children is always that fast read. But the key thing is you got to see her confront that monster, and she realizes in this moment in time that the monsters feed off of the children's fears. That's how the monsters get stronger. And Erica realizes that throughout this story, and she realizes that, wait a second, my mom never survived this murder, and you're trying to trick me. And so she overcomes that great fear, kind of like a yellow lantern type of thing. And it's funny how you wind up seeing the creature, how it's yellow, which I found out very coincidental. But she's like, you're not going to scare me. This is what happened. And this is what happened when I was lying on the ground. My parents were dead. No one survived. And she survived the trial. And what happens is she wakes up and they go, well, they left you. The little monster in the octo goes, they left you. And they thought you were going to die. And she's like, well, shit, I proved them wrong. And you see her walking away, and that's kind of how the issue ends. Very intense issue when it comes to seeing like the gore and how she fights the monster and if she's going to survive, but always learning that story on her trauma is wonderful. And again, if you've never read Something Is Killing the Children before and you want to jump on, you got to jump on, I think, at issue 17. I think that's where it was, where you start to learn the origin story of Erica Slaughter. And you can read this at the same time as long as the first couple of trade paperbacks, and you will be caught up. So guys, definitely read this title. It is amazing, and I can't wait to see how this continues and what is the next story after the origin tale of Erica Slaughter. All right, guys, so here we go. We're going to be talking about the Amazing Spider-Man issue 72. This is the Sinister War, the continuation. You guys all know my feeling about this story, this run, how drawn out the Kindred character is. And we learned something big in this particular book here that affected Norman Osborn from a long time ago, right? On why he has become the Green Goblin. I think that is the biggest thing that we got out of this book. So let's just say that Spider-Man is not the only one that has made the deal with the devil, but Norman Osborn has too. And you realize that when you read this book. Now, when it comes to the artwork in this title, I said it in my haul, it's not the very best artwork. It's lacks a little detail in the characters. Body structures look off. The fighting scenes weren't that great, but when things are still, it seems okay, right? Some decent facial expressions there. But that's what happens. You know, in this book, you get to see a few things, right? You see Carly Cooper and Harry that is with Carly kind of investigate the catacombs, and they wind up going to Carly's, like, the morgue, right? And Harry sees this body on the floor, and Carly's like, no! And then it just, you're stuck at that. You don't know what Harry is going to see. Is he going to see the dead version of himself, right? And find out the truth or what's going on. So that's one of those things. But the big reveal is you wind up getting to see the past of Norman and Harry's relationship, on how they actually did have a relationship at one point. But, you know, in the peak times of Norman Osborn's business, he was in a complete debt. He wasn't always very rich. He was in the shadows of his partner. And basically what happened is he made a deal with the devil. That's right. He made a deal with Mephisto. And holy cow, this is why Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin. It's because of this deal. After all these years, Nick Spencer inserted Mephisto here and said, this is going to be the deal of the millennia. Like, this is the biggest deal he has ever done. So that's why Norman is the way he is, and he can never escape the sins that he has accomplished, that he has done. And what he had to give up was his firstborn. And that's why Harry is, I guess, dead, or is experiencing all the trauma that he's experienced over the years. And now it all makes sense. It all comes true, or why things are like they are. And at the very last page of this book, we wind up getting to see Kindred talking with Mary Jane, and he goes, things are not always what they seem, and you see him getting ready to reveal himself. So it looks like you're going to have to wait just one more issue, maybe two, to see the true face of who Kindred actually is. So I'm very curious to see that. And what did you guys think about this Amazing Spider-Man issue? And do you think this was a good idea to put Mephisto behind Norman Osborn's reason why he became the Green Goblin? Let me know in those comments below. I thought that was a pretty big deal right there. That's pretty ballsy. And yeah, very curious to hear what you guys thought about this issue. All right, guys, so I'm going to consider this right now, even though I haven't read all 25 books that I bought so far, but I'm going to consider this the surprise pick of the week. Now, even though this was on my most anticipated comic books of the week, I did not think that this book was going to be as good, and this is Darkhawk issue 1. This is done by Kyle Higgins. This is the same writer that's done Power Rangers and currently does Radiant Black, and there's a lot of fans out there that are fans of that Radiant Black series, and this was a very good surprise. The artwork here by Juanan Ramirez was extremely good. I thought the characters looked good, the facial expressions were good. Let me see if I can get you a picture of Darkhawk himself in here. So he looked pretty good as well. Colors are nice and vibrant. This was a really interesting book and a very good origin story. You know, there's some origin stories that are just like, yeah, we've seen it before. And, you know, we always get origin stories, but somehow you could not help feel for the character and what he went through, which his name is Connor. And Connor is this huge basketball star for Empire State University. Looks like he's going to get drafted. They're about to win the championship. And there was a lot of good things going for this guy. And we get to see things go down the drain for him, basically. We get to see him like experiencing bad things, right? And at first you're not sure what's happening, but he did take the game-winning shot in a basketball game. He winds up winning and prevailing. And he just realizes that he's like ultra tired. He feels super off. He runs into a former basketball player that played at the state, that played at the college, but never made it into the pro leagues. And the next thing you see is Connor goes out for a jog the next day to clear his head, and he winds up going through an episode. He winds up getting tested and things like that, and he hurt his eye when he fell on the concrete, and we find out that the poor kid's got multiple sclerosis. Man, oh man, I mean, that is just horrible. That this kid has all his hopes and dreams, his whole life's ahead of him, and now because of this disease, he's not going to be able to play basketball anymore the way he once did. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't amount to something great, right? There's always ways to change your life, but this book had a great message in it, being just because something bad has happened to you, but doesn't mean that this is the end. When one door shuts, there's another door that opens type of message in here, and I really like that, and it plays true to like what a superhero comic is. And this is the character that's going to be the next Darkhawk, right? That takes over Chris Powell's legacy. And so what happens is he goes to the game as kind of just watching the game, and everyone's going, why is he on the bench? What happened to him? Is he really as good as what he seems? So he winds up leaving, and the next thing we wind up seeing is these guys are robbing this place to, I don't know, get this armor or whatever it is. And the next thing is we see this amulet coming down, right? And Connor reaches out for it, and all of a sudden he becomes Darkhawk, and he winds up saving the day, stops the bad guys from stealing things, and right away he knows what he must do. And it's pretty cool because some of these kids, they're older, or these people that were do know who Darkhawk was. They're kind of like, I think that looks like Darkhawk, but you know, he looks different. Because it's funny, it makes me feel old because they're like, my dad knows Darkhawk, you know. So there was a lot of good moments in there like that. So right away Connor knows that he's in for the next chapter in his life. The only thing I felt that was a little bit rushed was the Darkhawk moments. It was like the amulet comes crashing down, he reaches for it, and right away he stops bad guys, and he's like, oh, I know what I have to do. I feel like you have to go through that trial and tribulation a little bit of knowing that you have to be a superhero, but you do get enough here that it relays that message, right? And the journey from him dealing with this multiple sclerosis thing is pretty interesting, and it looks like it's going to be an ongoing fight. So I really like that, and there was a really cool twist at the end with his friend that you thought was really a good guy, and he kind of really isn't. So really great book. This is the surprise pick of the week. If you guys never knew who Darkhawk was, right, back in the 90s, and that's when I was a kid, and now I'm 46 years old, and you want to get reintroduced to the character or introduced to the character for the first time, I definitely say pick this book up. You're not going to be disappointed, especially if you become a fan of Kyle Higgins' writing. All right, fans, so that wraps up another episode of After the Poll. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Now I gotta get read into those other 20 books that I have left. Guys, I want to know in the comments below if you were reading any of these books, which ones you liked the most. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and of course, don't forget to hit that bell. If you like the content and you want to check out that most anticipated video that these books were featured on and where they ranked, I'll leave you that video right here, and then I'll leave you some random stuff over here as well. So until next time, guys, keep buying, keep collecting, keep reading those comic books, and I'll see you on that next video.